Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya Diddy, and I'm the Vice President of Field Operations for Concerned Women for America. And we are delighted to have you a part of our inaugural summer series with Concerned Women for America. We wanted to be able to speak into our core issues, and we wanted to be able to do that to educate and equip, and we wanted to do it in an engaging way, and that is to bring speakers on that are really living reality within our core issues. And this week, we're going to be covering the core issue of sexual exploitation. And so again, I'm just grateful that you're with us today. I hope you enjoy our presentation this afternoon. And I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Doreen Denny, who is Vice President of Government Relations, and she is going to introduce our guest. Doreen?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. Here we go. Thank you. Well, like I said, it's a delight to be with you. And really, you know, this subject, of course, is near and dear to my heart. As the Vice President of Government Relations, we've been spending a lot of time focused on the importance of maintaining sex distinctions for women and men in our culture, but we know that the impact for females is a particularly acute. And in the light of the Supreme Court decision this last week, you know, it is really kind of throwing up the question of whether or not our culture is going to stand for female identity and status. And so, you know, I had an opportunity, it's just been over a year ago, to be at a panel with Beth at the Heritage Foundation. And at the time we were discussing fair play in athletics in an age of gender identity. And you know, it seemed like at that point, it was just getting started, some of these conversations, even though we were seeing the impact, and Beth was feeling it firsthand in her role as an amateur powerlifter. But it was opening my eyes and certainly opening the organization's eyes, Concerned Women for America, to really what we're up against as we were debating the Equality Act at that time, and now just seeing the impact that courts can have in this space. And I remember, Beth, just that opportunity to see you before we got started on the panel, and how inspired I was just to be in your presence, just to know that, you know, that there are those like you on the front lines who have kind of found yourself in this place. And you didn't really, you know, you didn't bargain for it, you weren't looking for it, but you knew that there was a need. And so as the founder of Save Women's Sports, Beth and the organization has been a partner in partnering with us in CWA. I should say we're partnering with you. We've done it in so many different ways. We have been together working in state legislatures this year that we're trying to advance women's sports bills. We were successful in Idaho in that and grateful, but you know, all of these again are under assault and under attack. We're working together on the International Olympic Committee with the petition. We're working on the NCAA and their issues with their policies. We're working together to bring voice to Congress, and really, as much as anything, to get the networking into our culture, to get the grassroots to be aware, people in our communities to understand that they have people who are giving voice and they want to be able to bring your voice into these debates. But we need to be really, what should I say, winsome in our ways, but also very intentional in our action now on these issues. And so, Beth, I would love to just have you give us anything about your own experience and background, and then also what you're seeing from your vantage point, how we could be inspired to engage and be a part of it. These ladies on this call are representing so many different walks of life, different states, different seasons of life. Many have daughters and granddaughters who are athletes. We have athletes on the call ourselves, some of our Young Women for America in colleges and universities. And so we all understand that these are critical issues. So we're with you in that. You don't have to convince us, but we do want to be educated about how we should be about thinking about this, be effective in our advocacy, and be inspired by your example and your really what you've laid in terms of the groundwork with Save Women's Sports. I would just mention that, you know, this week is the Title IX anniversary of Title IX, the 48th anniversary. And so we have been working, Beth, and I know you have, to raise awareness and just use it as an opportunity to, again, underscore the importance of these issues in our culture. And so I'm going to let you take it away from there. Thank you.
Beth, this is Tanya. I am going to do a switch in your rights, because right now you can't share your screen. So if you'll give me 1 second, I realize that you weren't able to do that. And so we're going to, you are now going to be made host, and you should now be able to share your screen.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, everyone, for giving me this opportunity. Unfortunately, I woke up with a little bit of a hoarse throat, so I'm going to try my best to get through, but I hope to inspire you all to help me save women's sports and just to help ignite your activist journey. So I put together a little PowerPoint for you guys, and I'm really open to any questions you have along the way or at the end here. So a little bit of who I am. Here I am in high school. I grew up in small town Minnesota, and I played various sports. I graduated in 2003, in the title.
We need to get that. That share screen's not up.
Oh.
There you go.
Are we good? Okay, there I am. Okay, so I was formerly a medical laboratory technician, and I got married and had a child and decided that I wanted to be just a housewife and a mom, although I shouldn't just put just there. There's lots of titles behind that. I love being outdoors, and my husband and I are entrepreneurs. We take down trees. In the summertime, we're pretty busy, but in the wintertime, I use that extra time for powerlifting. And that, for those who don't know, is the squat, which I'm doing there, the bench, which my son is helping me out with here, and the deadlift, which is my favorite because I'm tall, and that's the one that I can get away with pulling more weight with. So I had trained for almost 2 years in powerlifting before I really had the courage to compete in a sanctioned meet. And I trained about 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week in order to prepare for this. And that included even measuring my meals and monitoring and weighing my food intake. It was pretty brutal, but I had some goals that I really wanted to hit, and I was really looking forward to it. So in 2019, I entered the Minnesota Women's State Championship. Here I am doing my deadlift. You get 3 chances at each lift, and your highest weight at each one is added together in a combination with your age, and you get a point system. So that's how the winner of powerlifting is selected. Things did not go as I planned they would. This is J.C. Cooper, a transgender rights activist that protested the event because he was not allowed to compete in the women's state competition. He organized a disruptive protest that gathered 14 out of the 84 women that were there to time out at the bar and cause a disruptive scene for over 90 minutes of the event. Originally, 120 women were supposed to come to this championship, but because of rumors of these things going on, only 84 showed up. So I'd like to share with you just a brief moment of me behind stage at this protest of the athlete and some other competitors. They're chanting, "Share the platform." The athlete is in gray here. So by by protesting, these 14 athletes each did this 9 times throughout the day. So it was a very disruptive protest that, and a day that I didn't imagine. When I got home, boy, I researched and I tried to network, and I discovered a lack of resources and women being censored and even being harassed for speaking up. So I decided to create Save Women's Sports. It started with just resourcing and putting some news articles and science on there, and now we've grown into a coalition. I did receive death threats when I started Save Women's Sports, although I think the larger we are getting, the more that slows down, and the harassment we are getting is mainly just on social media, because you can't really argue with the science. And when your ideology is based on feelings and you come back to, what about my feelings then? What about my consent? And just to share with you, I frame those death threats and I put them on my wall. That's the motivation to use. One of them tells me to F off and die and choke in my own blood. I mean, these people are ridiculous. So there is valid reasons to have fear for speaking out, but Save Women's Sports has created this nice safe platform for women to be able to. And luckily, then, as Doreen mentioned, I was able to go to the Heritage Foundation to share my story. This is the first time for me to speak out publicly. So I was pretty terrified, but luckily Doreen was in the green room, and courage speaks to courage. And as I've learned, the Concerned Women for America are pretty fearless. So here I am. Here's a little bit of what I had to say that day. How I've been using my strength now that I've found it, I've been attending national meetings, met with some government officials, networking with other organizations such as yourself, doing podcasts, articles, interviews, however we can get the word out there. I've been lucky enough to get quoted in things like USA Today, Feminist Current. Some wouldn't be too proud of Breitbart, but and the Christian Post. Luckily, Brandon Showalter has been a good friend of ours in this movement. In October, I was lucky enough to get invited with Doreen and the other Concerned Women for America and other organizations for the Harris Supreme Court case. We rallied in front of the steps, and here's a bit of my speech from that. I know I don't need to convince you guys of the argument, but I do want to light a fire under you and show you also what we faced that day when we did speak out. We were called homophobes. So as Doreen can attest to, we were screamed at with megaphones, and this movement is not always easy, but there are a lot of positives that come out of it, and I want to remind you all to keep moving through movements like this, moments like this. One of the things that I was able to do was to meet one of my mentors through speaking out. I was able to train with the 11-time world powerlifting champion. At just 130 pounds, she bench presses about 300 pounds. So a person that I had in my gym locker through those 2 years of training, a picture that I looked at every time I opened my locker, I then got to train with them. So that was a pretty neat opportunity. And I'm a very small town girl. I never thought that I would get the opportunity to go to New York and network. Here I am in Times Square. I got to meet like-minded women, do interviews, and started to make some big plans for Save Women's Sports here. As you all know, many states have introduced bills or amendments to preserve female sports. Idaho's new law is currently under attack. the TRA are asking the NCAA to stop holding events there. So as Doreen mentioned, several of us are joining together to help fight back. And it's really been an honor for me to see bills created saying save women's sports. Sometimes I think as an activist, you almost suffer from like what they say, like imposter syndrome, or like, I'm not good enough to do this, or not, you know, I'm just little old me. But here I am, a wife, mom, just using my spare time, and look at where I've gotten. It's pretty incredible. In January, there is a federal bill introduced by Congressman Stubbe, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2020. So we will look forward to hopefully that getting some attention in the future when things open up again. I want to introduce you to Emily Catt here. I inspired her to carry a Save Women's Sports flag through an entire marathon. An entire marathon, she carried a Save Women's Sports flag saying a woman equals adult human female. It's a pretty incredible thing, and I just want you all to know that if I can do this little bit, what can you do? And please do what you can do. Moving forward for me, we're working on defending Idaho's new law and the petition to the Olympics. We're asking them to take this time off from COVID to simply look at what women have to say and have a balanced conversation. Don't rush into these rules so hastily. And you can sign on the petition at savewomensports.com/IOC petition. What can you learn from me? It doesn't matter where you grew up, how much money you have, your education, your voice matters. And protecting ourselves from this transgender movement is going to take a grassroots effort. We really need to put ourselves out there. Just those simple conversations with our neighbors, that are family members, the coach, the administrator. It may be difficult to start, but I think you'll find yourself very relieved, and so many people are just waiting for the opportunity to say, I feel the same way. I'm just afraid. We are the majority. We just happen to be the censored and silenced majority. We can't let this little vocal minority of men hold us back. Speak the truth and always trust your gut instinct. It's led me so far in this. There are many times I've wanted to give up, and I just trust my gut or prayed, and it has led me to these big things. And just when I start feeling imposter syndrome, I get an email to talk to people like you. And pretty awesome. Lastly here, when life gets you down, pick up something heavy. That powerlifting is some incredible stuff, but if you don't want to do that, just get to the gym, because working out is something amazing. My previous relationship, I was abused, and powerlifting actually helped me overcome my PTSD. I used to have panic attacks and awful dreams, and there's just something to the power that you unleash when you do something like lift 300 pounds off the ground like I've been able to do. I want to leave you with one thing here before we do Q&A. Call and write letters to your state representatives. Have those conversations, even though they might feel difficult. A lot of people aren't even aware of this war against women, and we need to help others feel safe in speaking the truth. And here's this one last bit. I want to leave you with a message from Selena. Shouldn't be up to these young girls. God bless them for their courage and their bravery in this, but they are the reason I feel that I should step up. I don't have as much to lose as they do, and they need our support. So thank you all for having me.
She can't. Okay.
Okay.
Beth, we're trying to figure out.
Beth?
Yeah.
I'm going to take over.
Okay.
Beth, what we need for you to do, I'm sorry, we'll have to mute issue. Beth, can you hear Tanya?
Yeah.
What I need for you to do, and I apologize for those that are participating, but Beth, if you can click on participants at the bottom and then find my name and make me a host, please.
Oh, sure.
My
Should be good.
I think great. Okay, well, I want to, sorry about that, everyone. I told those that were speaking not to mute themselves, and I muted myself, so I didn't follow my own instructions. But we wanted to take a little bit of time just to ask some questions to Beth. And Beth, and feel free to answer, you know, as you feel led to lead on these. And so here's one of the first questions that we received from one of our interns that is interning with us this summer. And she said, do you find that people dispute the scientific evidence that males have biological advantages over males in athletes?
The activists do dispute the science, but without, as the young folks would say, without receipts. There's no evidence. They come up with pseudoscience, or they're manipulating statistics. So yeah, in a way, but I know that we're in the truth. And so I almost steer away from talking about those, you know, testosterone levels or the male advantages, and just say, well, what about my feelings and my consent? This whole ideology is talking about their feelings, but what about ours, right? How can you argue with that?
Thank you. Good answer there. So thank you. That was very informative. I know that you talked a little bit about this, but we're going to ask another question into it. You talked a lot about the discriminatory parts, but how do you and how have you found the most effective way to combat the criticism that you're being discriminatory due to your being an advocate for female-only competition? So it's almost reversing, instead of us saying, but you're discriminating against females, they're reversing it and say, but you're discriminating because you're taking the female-only viewpoint. What's your response to that, and how would you guide us if we were ever confronted with that comment or question?
I kind of, you know, you gotta force them to stick in that tunnel of, we're talking about sports here, and sports by themselves are discriminatory. They have rules that force people out of them every day. And we have weight classes, we have height classes in some. It isn't hateful to want a fair competition.
Very good. Is there a common ground that we can appeal to when confronting people with opposing views? Is there any common ground in this issue that, you know, we can reach out to those that don't agree with us? Have you found any?
I think it's you know, it's often really difficult to argue with this other side, these transgender rights activists. But one thing that you can show is the footage. Show Selena getting beat by Terry and Andrea. Show Fallon Fox beating Tamika's skull open. There's not much that you can disagree with after that.
Very good. So what is one of the biggest concerns moving forward with Save Girls Sports in light of the recent Supreme Court ruling in the Harris case, which we were all there together when we were in front of the Supreme Court, lobbying and rallying side by side. What's your biggest concern with that case and the impact it's just going to have overall on female athletes in competition?
I think we're all concerned that this ruling just helps conflate sex and gender identity, and that it could possibly have fallouts on the Connecticut case. And I am just having hope, and I say in that side that, you know, we have the Department of Justice who just put out those 2 statements of interest. So we know the administration is on our side. So I don't have too much concerns about it right now. I think that this issue is going to be so big that it's not going to be ignorable soon. So I'm just sticking in that hope.
Thank you. And we are too, and we're praying too. A really great question comes from one of our interns, and I know that she is also an athlete. And you spoke a little bit on this, really on action items for us. But what would you say is the best way that our collegiate girls, or even our high school girls, this is going all the way down into middle school, it's just impacting female sports all around. What would you say is the best thing that you would coach them on trying to make a difference on this issue? We know silence will not work and engagement will, but what are the best strategies for them moving forward to try to make a difference in this and their voice being heard?
Right. Well, I would try to say, to start having those small conversations, get a small network of support, whether it's just 2, 3, 4 other people that you can bounce ideas off of and feel supported by, and go to your coach, go to the administration, go to your college board if you can. That's how these rules and regulations got snuck in basically under our feet. Like, we need to be represented, and we need to show our voice in these boards. Go to meetings, let people know. And as soon as more people speak up, courage speaks to courage.
Very good. Well, thank you for answering those questions. I'm going to turn the session back over to my colleague Doreen Denny, and she's just going to talk about some action items that we can do through Concerned Women for America, and probably echo some of what has been said today. But Doreen, if you want to come around, and I'm going to hand it back to Doreen, and Doreen is going to close us. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. And yet, Beth, and again, thank you so much. You've given us some really great things to think about today. I think that there are so many women on this call who have been really on the front lines in many states. They're leaders for us. And I think that, as you mentioned, there's no better way to continue to bring this to the forefront than to make people have to confront it, and to confront it, whether that be the letters to our state legislatures, whether it be, you know, the stories or the letters to the editor that we might write in the local newspapers. Certainly to participate in the petitions that we've put forward, and you know, the different, to the International Olympic Committee. Whenever we send out, we just today are sending out a request that people and share into their networks to get the members of the House to co-sponsor and support Representative Stubbe's Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, and you know, just the many different ways we have to convey the importance of this. And I do feel like there's the winsome way that we speak with our neighbors and our friends and those that are in our communities about having to start being truthful about how we feel about this, and help people to start understanding more and more the importance of why this matters. You know, and I know you've been on this, Beth. We're not saying that athletes that may have gender identity and different ways of perceiving themselves based on sex can't be athletes, right? But we have to be really clear that when we're talking about competition in female sports, competition in women's sports, that we have the right to be competing on a fair and even playing field with other female athletes. That's what Title IX was all about. And so I think we have to just be committed, and I know that women on this call are, but even be committed to being willing to say that and to express that as a truth. So I just want again to thank you, Beth. I don't know if you have any final thoughts or comments before we close, but really just for inspiring us today.
No, just thank you. Get out there and get active.
Yeah, again, I just remember that moment in April when we sat on that panel, or right before that, and just how you know, you were timid at that moment before you walked into that stage, and then your voice spoke. It spoke like a lion. You know, you just spoke with authority, and you have spoken both out of your pain and out of the hope that you have. And so I just want you to know how much we admire you for all you're doing and all that you stand for, and for the many women that you've drawn in to have a place where they felt supported, and they felt that they had you know, somebody that understood what they're feeling. And I think that we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we have made some progress. We might be feeling some setbacks, and we will continue to do so, but we have got to continue marching forward. And so just joining hands, linking arms with you today, Beth, and with Save Women's Sports, and look forward to our continued partnership.
Likewise, stay strong.
Yay. Thank you. So that concludes our meeting today. We're so grateful that you joined us for the first in our summer series with CWA. Have a wonderful day.